Welcome to the Daily Horror Habit Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Krieger, bringing you daily reviews of currently streaming horror movies for your twisted pleasure. Be aware that these reviews may include mild spoilers. And as always, I hope you enjoy. The older I get, the more I despise most movie trailers. It's a trite soapbox to stand upon, but hey, it's my soapbox to stand on, so hear me out. Trailers' sole purpose is to sell you on the film within 120 seconds or more. Often modern trailers fall into the or more category, and they tend to be overly long, unnecessarily spoiling or hinting at the direction a film's narrative will take. I also have a problem where when I actually get around to watching the film and notice a scene from the trailer, I begin to try to piece together how other scenes from the trailer will play out and connect to one another. That's very much a me problem, but it has led me to watching only about half of a trailer before stopping and then waiting for the film to be released. It's strange, but it's served me well over the years, and as a result, I'm more surprised by films such as Carlo Mirabella Davis's debut feature Swallow, which had more than one surprise in store for me. Currently streaming on video-on-demand platforms, Swallow follows Hunter, played by Haley Bennett, who seemingly has it all. But as we learn, what seems idyllic on the surface can be anything but in reality. Hunter's lavish lifestyle and cheerful demeanor are a facade put on by a woman in a manipulative and emotionally fraught relationship. As a result of her constant emotional abuse and repression of a terrible secret from her past, she develops the condition pica, the irresistible urge to eat inedible objects. What begins as a strange obsession turns deadly as her condition worsens as she pushes herself to consume deadlier and deadlier items, exacerbating her physical health as well as prolonging her emotional turmoil. I assumed that I had a good idea of what Swallow would entail, and was surprised to learn that there is much more to this than its Stepford wife body horror presentation. Swallow does include a handful of sickeningly body horror moments that are so intense you'll find yourself drinking an inordinate amount of water to clear your unblocked throat. More on that shortly. Mirabella Davis smartly focuses on Hunter's psychological trauma that she's experiencing as a result of her past, as well as her current, unfulfilled relationship. Swallow begins with Mirabella Davis's vision, but it is Haley Bennett who sells us with her stellar performance as a woman suffering with a smile. Her journey to realizing the true source of her trauma is equally heartbreaking and rage-inducing. Hunter, having married into her husband Richie's family money, binds her to their every dismissive, aside, and manipulative behavior. And when she finds out she's pregnant with Richie's baby, she is truly trapped, unable to move on or to take control of her life in a way that she finds suitable. So, as a result, she controls her life in the only way she feels she can, by eating objects around the house. What begins as a fixation with chewing ice, which causes her in-laws and husband to glare at her, grows increasingly deadly, running the pantheon of items you could find in any household drawer, and, but not limited to, marbles or even thumbtacks. And while these moments of bloody body horror are shocking and literally stomach-churning, the true horror of the film is her psychological abuse and trauma. The film deconstructs her seemingly perfect life and reveals she is very much a mental hostage to not only her in-laws, but also to her family baggage which until now she has repressed. The film is very much a commentary on trauma, gaslighting, and even medical malpractice, which happens to be tied into disturbing instances of body horror. What stops the film from ever feeling repetitive or losing steam is the variety of ways in which Mirabella Davis crafts tension, whether focusing on a moment of body horror or domestic drama between Hunter and Richie, the latter often being more sinister and far more disturbing. As we learn that once Hunter's disorder becomes somewhat manageable, a new phase of uprooting her home life is thrown into high gear. A live-in nurse is assigned to her, paid to monitor her every movement throughout the day to ensure she doesn't relapse. This is disguised as a preventative measure for her own safety, yet in actuality is another facet of being controlled and keeping the family's asset intact. This ultimately feeds into the idea that Hunter is an object, and those around her ultimately find value in her in their ability to maintain control of that object. Swallow's presentation is also backed up by a real mastery of space and complemented by cinematographer Caitlin Azramendi, keen eye for conveying Hunter's lavish home as a dreamlike prison. The color palettes used to display her lavish riverbed home are mesmerizing as they convey a peaceful atmosphere contrasted to Hunter's living hell. I was really quite taken with Swallow in a way that I didn't expect to be. I assumed it would more or less solely focus on its body horror premise, but rather there's much more to it than that, and as a result, it's better for it. The psychological angle is both equally disturbing, but becomes more character-driven, lending a greater emphasis towards poignant but important social commentary. I find this an easy recommendation to those who prefer more character-driven, psychological scares than an excessive amount of body horror carnage. Though, don't worry, there's still going to be plenty of grotesque moments that we'll discuss, as well as unnerve. Ultimately, Swallow serves as yet another excellent example of the value that horror has in discussing uncomfortable stories and realities within the confines of the genre. And that'll do it for another episode of Daily Horror Habit. I'll see you guys tomorrow for another Daily Horror movie review. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Daily Horror Habit on your preferred streaming service and follow @Daily Horror Habit on Instagram and @Daily Horror Pod on Twitter.